Hello, and welcome to our show, Hope, helping other people excel. And that's what our goal is here on our show today. And every week, we want to help you excel. We want to help everybody excel because the rising tide raises all ships. So if we can all do better, then our world will be better. So, and I want to start the show out with a poem from an unknown monk in 1100 AD, and it's called "I Wanted to Change the World." And it said, when I was a young man, I wanted to change the world. I found it difficult to change the world, so I tried to change my nation. And when I found I couldn't change the nation, then I began to focus on my town. I couldn't change the town, and as an older man, I tried to change my family. Now, as an old man, I realize the only thing I can change is myself. And suddenly, I realized that if long ago I would have changed myself, I could have made an impact on my family. My family and I could have made an impact on our town, and the impact could have changed the nation, and I would have indeed changed the world. So we need to change our thoughts and change ourselves through our thoughts, and that will indeed ultimately help us change the world. And that kind of gets back to our helping other people excel and raising the tide to raise all ships. So we want to start in our own little communities. We want to start in ourselves, change ourselves, become better people, and that's what I hope to inspire you to do today and every week on our show. And before we go any further, I'd like to give some credits to WCET Television and all the fine staff that's behind the scenes back there making this show happen, and thank them for having us on the air. I want to thank Pastor Gary Myers and Heaven is My Home Ministry for helping get this started here and inspiring us to do this show. So a little bit of review. Last week we reviewed the 9 essential laws for becoming influential by a man named Tony Zeiss, and in his first chapter, the law of attitude, he said the most important law for becoming influential is having a positive attitude. And I think that's so important, and that's something that we all need to work on a regular basis. When we get up first thing in the morning, tell ourselves we're going to have a good day today, and we're going to be positive today, and we're not going to be affected by the people's negatives. And it's all about choices that we make. I'm reminded of Chris Brady, a good man in one of our businesses, and he talks about how he sees the squirrels down in North Carolina, and they're running across the road, and all of a sudden they stop when they see the car, and it seems like they just are stopping on purpose and wondering which way to go. And Chris always says, make good choices, because whatever happens to that squirrel is going to depend on how good a choice he made. And so we need to make those good choices ourselves. And the choice to be bright and be happy and cheerful and to have a good attitude, and I think that's what Tony was trying to say in the 9 essential laws for becoming influential. Nobody likes to be around a whiner. Everybody wants to be with the winner. And so if you want to be popular and you want to have good friends and you want to be around people that are happy, you need to be happy and optimistic as well. We talked a little bit about last week about famous ball player there, Babe Ruth, and how he was persistent in hitting home runs, and even though he missed repeatedly, he still continued to take another swing and keep at it. And, so keeping a good attitude. And then last week we talked a little bit, too, about advanced technology from Elon Musk called Hyperloop. Elon Musk is the founder of PayPal and Tesla Motor Corporation and a new company called SpaceX. They've kind of stepped up and taken over where NASA has ended. But he's building this transportation system capable of speeds up to 4,000 miles an hour. And they're planning to start building that sometime next year out in California. It's going to be a big loop, a Hyperloop, and it's based on 3 technologies. The one would be the type of unit that they use at the bank when they bring your deposits at the drive-in. It sucks that little canister up through the tube right there, and so it uses partly that vacuum type technology. It uses railgun technology that they use, linear accelerators, kind of like they use on the high-speed trains in Japan, and then it also, everything floats on kind of air, so there's very little friction. But using those 3 technologies, they can make this train go extremely fast. And they claim that maybe in the future we'll be able to go from New York to LA in over 45 minutes. That's twice as fast as an average aircraft can go. But they're talking about the cost of building it is even less than building regular trains and or even roads. So that's pretty amazing. But in going to their website and kind of doing a little research on this information, the thing that struck me the most was at the very end on their website, they asked the question, do you have what it takes to change the world? And I believe that we all have what it takes to change the world. I believe that God put that in our hearts when we were born. I believe that somewhere in our hearts we were all born with a purpose and a mission. And so oftentimes we get bogged down with the day-to-day trials of our life and, busy trying to make some money so we can pay the bills and the kids going off to college and, so many things. And it just tends to eventually squeeze out our dreams and our goals and then our mission, that God gave us when we came here. And sadly enough, as a result, we wind up being ineffective in our lives and not accomplishing the things that God sent us here to do. And so that's where we want to try and help people again to get recover those dreams, get back to those goals, remember what it was that excited you as a youth, whether it was cars or boats or houses or building. Some people it was ministry, helping missions and people in other countries. Other people were about helping people locally and trying to maybe even help the homeless in your area. But the amazing part, like we saw earlier in that poem, is if we start in our own community, if we start with our own selves and we become better people, we help other people get better by what happens to us. They see the change in us and then they want that change in their own lives. And I likened it before to the thawing of Narnia. At the end of the movie in the Chronicles of Narnia, the whole land had been frozen over and covered with ice, and as changes began to occur in hearts and in lives, then we began to see the thawing of that. And it's springtime now, and we're looking forward to Easter here, and we're starting to experience that thawing in our own land here in Michigan. And so we can all relate to that. But Abe Lincoln was faced with so many trials growing up, and even in his adult life, he failed for running for Congress and various political offices. He had the love of his life, and she died. He was engaged to her, and she died early, and before they could even get married. And all of these setbacks that Abe experienced, and so many of us are allowing the setbacks that we have in our lives to keep us from moving forward. But it didn't stop Abe. Abe still went on to do something great and become a great man and to do a lot to change his world. And I just want to encourage you, don't let the setbacks in your life hold you down. Don't let them keep you from moving forward and becoming successful. Whether your success is financial or whether your success is in helping other people become successful, maybe even it's not financially, but maybe it's just in their relationships or whatever. But we want to encourage that anyway. We talked about the Dalai Lama, and when you think everything is someone else's fault, you will suffer a lot, he said. And when you realize that everything springs only from yourself, then you will learn both peace and joy. And so there's another example, excuse me, or situation where we need to work on ourselves. And the Dalai Lama recognized that working on ourselves to become better people is what we really need in our world. A man by the name of John Shedd, he is quoted as saying, "A ship in the harbor is safe, but that's not what ships are made for." And I just really love that little quote because so oftentimes we want to take the safe course in our life, and we want that security of a job, or we want that security of a savings account or whatever else, but as a ship in our world, we're told by God to go out into the world and to minister to other people and not keep the safe road, not stay in the harbor, because we're not made for that. We're not made to be safe. We're made to go out there and change the world and make a difference. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about another book. We speak about a lot of books. I do a lot of reading because I believe that leaders are readers. And if you want to become a leader, you've got to stop letting people tell you what to think, and you've got to start learning how to think and think for yourself. And so many of the books that we talk about here are exactly about that. They're all about trying to learn how to think for yourself, and that way we're not just wandering aimlessly in life like a ship without a sail, but we are actually making progress and we're going a specific direction. And so Dr. Dennis Waitley wrote a book called The Psychology of Winning, and it's just a really amazing book about winning, but it's also teaches us the 10 qualities of a total winner, and those qualities that we need to implement in our own lives to become the winners that God intended for us to be. And I'm not going to spoil the whole book by telling you what the 10 qualities are. I certainly recommend that you go out and get these books. Whenever we talk about one on here, it's going to be because it's a good book and it's got good information. And but I do want to talk about a little bit of the highlights in the beginning of the book. Dennis Waitley talks about how we are either captive or the captains of our thoughts. And I believe that's so true. When we start having negative thoughts, it's time for us to not be captive by those negative thoughts and those depressing and down things that get us bummed out and sad, but we need to be the captain of our thoughts. We need to take charge of those thoughts, and we need to say to ourselves, you know what, we're going to make those good choices. We're going to choose to think differently. And it takes a little bit of training, because we are all born with these, not born with them, but over the years, I've got over 50 on me, we developed these bad habits of thinking negative thoughts. And it was said recently, or I heard recently, that 90% of our thoughts, even for those of us who think we're positive and in good positive frame of mind and positive spirits, still over 90% of our thoughts are negative. And it reminds me of a story by Terry Brady, and she likes to talk about how she was kind of bamboozled by the spell checker, and I'm sure you can all relate to that. But her name is Terry, Terri, and as she would type that into her phone to text it to somebody, the response from the spell checker was terrible. And she thought to herself, well, that's kind of interesting, because, terrible, why would it not be something better? Why does it go negative? Why wouldn't it use the word terrific? Because it still starts out with the same Terri. So why wouldn't the spell checker go toward the positive rather than the negative? But that just is kind of evidence in our world that our thinking is so negative so oftentimes that even our spell checkers go to the negative. They go to the terrible rather than the terrific. And Terry's, when she types in her last name, it comes up as Rash, and so when she texts people oftentimes and goes to try and sign off at the end, it comes up as terrible rash, and she was thinking, really a terrific rash isn't necessarily a good thing either. So that was kind of her little bit of humor there. But it's so amazing how we have those negative thoughts, and Dennis Waitley says we need to be captain of our thoughts and not captive. And the fact that we literally become what we think about most of the time. Earl Nightingale spoke about that in The Strangest Secret. There's a video you can Google on YouTube, all of that information, and hear his actual speech, and it's a really great, motivating, inspiring speech. But what we think about most of the time is what we become. And if we're going to dwell on those negative thoughts, if we're going to dwell on the bad parts and the bad things that have happened in our life, whether it's a flat tire, or you spilled the coffee this morning, or so many things in our life, and we tell ourselves all day long, oh, we're having a terrible day, and that consequently we have a terrible day, when we could be telling ourselves positive things. We could say, you know what, I spilled my coffee, but at least I didn't spill it on the cat. Or, I got a flat tire, but it was only one, and, I've got time. I'm not rushed for work. I got a little early today for work. And if we think those positive thoughts, and we tell ourselves, you know what, I'm going to have a terrific day instead of a terrible day, and then you start thinking those things, it manifests itself in your life. And you'll find that you have, instead of a terrible day, you'll have a wonderful day. You'll be more cheerful in your attitude. Other people will respond to you more cheerfully. And that in itself is just a huge difference between, coming into work grumpy because you had a flat tire on the way, or, you stubbed your toe when you woke up this morning. And so we need to really be captain of our thoughts, and tell ourselves that we're having good days and we're going to have good things in our lives and not dwell on those negative, like Earl Nightingale talks about in The Strangest Secret. As you see yourself in your mind's eye, so you become. And, that's all talking about the same thing. We and even the Bible talks about that. If we think good thoughts, whatsoever we choose to think of, whether it's we need to dwell on those things of good report and those good things in our world. And so that's a biblical principle even. Excuse me. There's so many people in our world that started out as, just like we all do, as a child, but they had big dreams for themselves, and they had big visions. And as they began to dwell on those as children, those things began to direct their lives. And I'm thinking of Neil Armstrong as one of those. As a little boy, how could he have known that someday he might walk on the moon, or that he might be an astronaut? But as a little boy, he was fascinated by those things, and that's what he wanted, and that's the things he sought after, was things about space and things about flying and so on. And when we look at what he thought of as a young man, those dreams that he had, they eventually became something, and he actually did do something successful. But if he would have dwelled on the negative and said, I'm just a little boy, I probably won't be able to ever be in space. We don't even have a space program yet. We can fly, but whoever would have thought of being on the moon. But he didn't let those limitations keep him from being successful. And the Wright brothers, they were the same way. They didn't know that they were going to be making an airplane someday. As little boys, they were probably like most of us. They liked riding their bikes, and of course they had a bicycle shop. And that's partly where the inspiration came for the planes that they created. And now today we have these jets, and as I told you about earlier, the Hyperloop thing that Elon Musk is working on, where we'll be able to travel thousands of miles an hour. That's just absolutely amazing, But it's these men that didn't let those negative thoughts affect their lives, but instead chose to choose positive thoughts. And they thought good things, and they thought, you know what? I am somebody. I am important. God made me, and He put me on this earth for a reason and a purpose, and I'm going to find out what that is, and I'm going to pursue that purpose. And, I don't know what's going on in your world today or in your life. I'm sure that you have problems. We all do. Everybody has little things that they have to worry about, whether it's money, and sometimes we think they're not little things. But if we choose to have a positive attitude about them instead of the negative, if we have the terrific day instead of the terrible day, if we work on improving the things in our world and our lives, improving our attitudes, because attitude is everything. It really truly is the rudder that guides the big ship. We need to keep that good attitude, and if we can do that, then we too will find ourselves becoming more successful and accomplishing more things and being more cheerful, and other people wanting to be near us because they like that enthusiasm and they like that cheerfulness that rubs off from us to them. And consequently too, we like to hang around with positive people. If you got that Debbie Downer that's dragging you down every day, and that isn't going to be good for you. It's going to drag you down into the mud, and the next thing you know, you're going to be negative yourself and thinking how terrible of a day you're going to have instead of that terrific day. So anyway, there's all these men that we can look to that can inspire us, and what you see in your mind's eye is what you become. Whether it's whether you become an alcoholic or an athlete, or a prostitute or a nurse, or a drug dealer or a teacher, or a panhandler or president, or nobody or somebody, or a winner or a loser. It's those thoughts that you tell yourself. What do you tell yourself? What do you tell yourself every day when you get up? Do you tell yourself, I'm somebody? Do you tell yourself, I'm successful? Maybe you're not successful yet in your own mind, but then do you tell yourself, I'm going to be successful? It's coming. I just have to keep at it and be persistent and be patient, and it'll happen. Because it will. If we think those thoughts, that's what we will wind up being. And Dennis Waitley talks about, in the Psychology of Winning, he talks about the POW and how for so many of us that connotation means prisoner of war. And that's a negative thing, and it's we look at that as bad. But For somebody that lives over in Scotland, it might be Prince of Wales as POW. And of course, that brings to mind a totally different image in our mind. To somebody in the women's liberation movement, the power of women might be inspiring to them, and they'd feel better about that. Or prisoner of wishes. But in Dennis Waitley's case, it's the psychology of winning. And, that's so important, how we look at things and what that POW means to you. How you personally take it, that counts. And, we've got to start working on that immediately. We've got to start using that day to day in our lives, because we only have so much time. Time is an asset that we have that's of finite nature. It has only so much, kind of like property in the world. There's only so much land. And so these things are valuable, way more valuable than we realize. And yet so oftentimes we waste our day by what? Watching a sitcom? What did that accomplish for you? Is that going to help you reach your goals? Is that going to help you become somebody? Is that going to make you a better person? Is that going to affect the people around you and help them be happier or feel better? Is that going to be an encouragement to you? Or is it just wasting our time? Is it just filling in the blanks? We really don't have time to waste. If I was your doctor and I came to you and said, you've got 24 hours to live, and so we're sorry to give you that bad news, but how many of you would go to work tomorrow? How many of you would go to work tomorrow if the boss said, you know what, I'll give you $50 an hour today instead of $20 or $10 an hour like you usually get? Would you still want to go to work? Would you be willing to give up 1 hour of your day for $50? How about $100? How about $500? You only got 24 left. The truth is, we don't know how many hours we have left. None of us know that. We all have a finite amount, and it's fixed, and God knows when we're going to go. But other than that, we're all here. And so, what is it that you're doing with your time? Statistics show that we spend over 100,000 hours with the people that we know and love at our workplace. And yet we only spend 25,000 hours with our significant other, our spouse. And out of all that time, for our children, we get less than 12,500 hours. What is it that you're doing with your time? Your time is so important. Are you sleeping it all away? There's plenty of time for sleep later. Many of people have said that. I'll be dead soon enough. I'll sleep then. And you know what? If you're like me, I like a good 8-hour night. I really do. But you know what? There's important things to be done out there for God and for ourselves and for our nation and for each other. And we need to be more conscious of our time. I think of a song by Pink Floyd, and it's called Time. And it says, ticking away the moments that make up a dull day, you fritter and waste your hours in an offhand way, kicking around on a piece of ground in your hometown, waiting for someone or something to show you the way. Tired of lying in the sunshine, staying home to watch the rain, you are young and life is long, and there is time to kill today. Then one day you find 10 years have got behind you, no one told you when to run, you missed the starting gun. So you run and you run to catch up with the sun, but it's sinking, racing around to come up behind you again. The sun is the same in a relative way, but you're older, shorter of breath, and one day closer to death. So I really want to encourage you to, make the most of your time. Don't let it be frittered away and wasted in such a way, because there's so much yet that needs to be done. And you are important. So many of us, I think, so oftentimes think, well, what can I do? What can I do in my world? And it goes back to that same thing about the monk in the beginning that we read, the nice little poem about if I just change myself, if I become a better person, if I become a kinder, softer, gentler me, if I don't get angry when something doesn't go right, I knock the coffee off the cup and kick the cat, that's where it all starts. It all starts right here in our own hearts, that we just really have to lift ourselves up and realize that we are important and that we do have a significant effect on other people. Thomas Edison tried over 10,000 times to create the light bulb, And he said, I have not failed 10,000 times. I've just found 10,000 ways that it won't work. And so it's the persistence that paid off in his case. But so oftentimes we aren't persistent. We, have a small little crash, an insignificant, really, when you get down to the long and the short of it, what we would call failure. But it's not a failure. It's just another opportunity to learn that that's one way it's not going to work. I'm reminded of what Orrin Woodward has said. He's a New York Times best-selling author. And he said, failure is not a person. It's an occurrence. It's not a noun, it's a verb. We aren't failures. Nobody is a failure. We have failures. There are times when we make mistakes and we fall on our face. But, C.S. Lewis, the writer of the Chronicles of Narnia, he said that hardships often prepare ordinary people for an extraordinary destiny. And so if we look at it from that perspective, again, make that choice to look at it in a good light, we realize that the hardships that came in our life today are there to prepare us, and we need to try and look for something that we can learn from that hardship, so that, number one, not only will we not repeat that hardship again tomorrow, but that we will become a better person for that. We will become a stronger person, and we'll be better off maybe to help somebody else deal with a similar problem that they had in their life. And we can help them through it and help raise their ship and make them better. And all of these things. Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad and the Cash Flow Quadrant, he says success is a poor teacher. We learn most about ourselves when we fail. So don't be afraid of failing. Failing is part of the process of success. You can't have success without failure. And so, there again, we have another encouragement from a man who has been successful. And he said, you know what? I've had my failures too. But if we learn from them and if we use that as a tool to make ourselves better, then we too can be successful. And I'm here to tell you today, you too can be successful. You don't have to be a failure. You can make the choice to be a better man or a better woman. You can be a better person. You can choose to smile today, even though you don't feel like smiling. And it's kind of neat, but when you start to smile, if you just even have to force it for a minute, the fake it till you make it, you put that smile on your face, and before long, you're starting to think happier thoughts. And the next thing you know, that smile isn't forced anymore, but it's actually coming from within inside of you, like a well that's flowing forth, like Jesus said, rivers of living water flowing forth. And then you are indeed happy and you are smiling. And so I really want to encourage you in those areas. You can be successful. Just got to make those good choices. Don't be like that little squirrel. And Christopher Robin said to Winnie the Pooh, and I like to wind up our show with this a little bit, there is something you must always remember. You are braver than you know, or than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. And so I just want to encourage you to realize that in yourself. Dig deep and reach down in yourself and be encouraged and know that you are somebody important, that God made you, and if he didn't intend for you to have a purpose in your life and a purpose in this world, he would have never created you. And it's important, and it's up to you to find out what that purpose is. I want you to know that you can get some of the books that we talk about. I'm going to show a website on the screen here that you can go to, and then you can get some of the books that we refer to if you need to. Otherwise, you're welcome to find them at Barnes & Noble or whatever. If you have any comments or questions about our show, 616-799-0517, and email jim.pate@gmail.com. And so be encouraged and be lifted up and bring hope to other people, help other people excel. Thank you for watching our show today. God bless you.